Property conditions A, access, inspections, and utilities. And just literally to sum it up, the buyer may have the property inspected by an inspector selected by the buyer and licensed by TREC. Licensed by TREC means just that, exactly that. They have to be licensed inspector by TREC. Otherwise, permitted by law means licensed HVAC or plumber or electrician, somebody that's licensed by the state to do such work. Sellers should have the utilities on so buyer has can have their inspections done. So the utilities must be on. It says it must be on during the time this contract is in effect. So if you're working with a listing by a seller, it's important for them. I wouldn't turn off utilities until after closing. Okay. Closing is funded, all documents signed, and the money is in your account. All right, and let's move on to the next thing, which is seller's disclosure. So you're going to have to check one of these three boxes, all right? Meaning one of these needs to be selected. If nothing's selected, you have not selected anything, but you need to be checking one. It says check one box. So box one is buyer has received the notice. This is about seller's disclosure. So you would check box one of the seller's disclosure. If it's been uploaded in MLS by the listing agent, it is considered delivered. So you would check it. Your responsibility as a buyer's agent is to download it, put it in, print it, give your client a copy of it, and they sign all the bottom of it, acknowledging that they received it. Or download it, put in dot loop like you usually do, make your signatures and whatnot, right? So if you have it, it's attached in MLS or they emailed you the sales disclosure later on, then you're going to be selecting this saying buyer has received a notice. You receiving the notice is just like your client, the buyer receiving the notice. So make sure you get it over to them ASAP, okay? Now, the other option is buyer has not received the notice. So this is saying, hey, it's not attached to an MLS. The agent hadn't sent it to me and the buyer has not received it at all. I haven't received it, and I usually put 3 days after the effective date of this notice, the seller will deliver that to us. If they do not get that notice, the buyer can terminate this contract at any time prior to closing and get their earnest money back. So this is very important for you to go ahead and make sure this is taken care of, okay? Sorry if I reiterate something. So I'm just making sure I touched on my points. If it's not loaded in MLS and the buyer can check this, or if they didn't send you an email with it, and insert the number of days the listing agent has to deliver the form. I say put 3 days in there, okay? It shouldn't take long for them to get that to you. If this option is checked, the buyer has 7 days after receiving the form to examine it. And the buyer can terminate the contract during this period of time and have the earnest money refunded to them. Now, the third option is the seller is not required to furnish a notice under the Texas Property Code. So you're going to check this if someone has made mention that this particular seller is not required. There are very, very few circumstances where seller's disclosure is not required. I'm sorry, I'm going to try to get there. We can go through a little later, but it's very, very rare that that's the case. Before you also just check off the buyer has received the notice. So even if it is attached, you see how this one, let's see, this has a sales disclosure attached. Even though it's attached, you want to open it up as a listing agent, a buyer's agent, and protect your client and make sure it is completed. If it is not complete, you need to send it back to the listing agent and say, hey, Mr. Listing Agent, I know this sales disclosure is not complete. Go ahead and check box 2. Put 3 days and say, please send it to me once it's completed. You can still finish your contract, but I would not have my client sign a sales disclosure that is not complete. So let's look at this a little bit. So again, you're going to go here and make sure they have put something in every single box. They have yes, no, or unknown. They have to put something in each and every box, all right? Make sure there's initials at the very bottom. They've selected something in all these. Tells them how old the shingles are. It tells them a lot of information, but they need to, it's the seller's job is to fill this out. The seller's agent cannot fill this out for them, only the seller. So you got to make sure it's complete. I would make sure they have signed, all pages are there, 3 through All 6 pages are there. I'd make sure that everything has been addressed. The only one I wouldn't care too much about being addressed is this area right here. I'd let my client sign if the only thing missing was this stuff, because you can find this stuff other places. But make sure all the signatures are there. All these questions have been addressed in some form or fashion. Keep an eye out for things like this right here. If the property has been inspected in the past 4 years, maybe this person is buying the property, reselling a property they bought like 3 years ago. Maybe they had an inspection. They do have to attach the inspection with this, but just be cognizant that just because it was a 4-year-old inspection, they may have done repairs. So I need a copy of that inspection report that you got, yes, but I'd also like a list of things that you've done to rectify all the problems that were shown in the inspection report, guys, right? We want to, because more than likely they've been living there and they've probably fixed some things up. But yeah, if you have this, all the pages are not there, you don't have a home, and they're not, everything's not addressed, you don't have a sales disclosure. So I would check box number 2, even if it is attached. Do you want to take care of your client? That's one way you do it. All right. Making sure that these are all there. All right. Let's go back to it. It is a federal rule that pretty much if a property is built prior to 1978, that lead-based paint addendum is filled out, right? So that is required. So that's just kind of a notice that, hey, if it's built before 1978, you need that addendum. D, acceptance of property as is, meaning present condition. This is not saying that you can't get an inspection and stuff like that. Just saying from what I see right now, I accept the property as is. I highly suggest you, as my agents, go ahead and check buyer accepts property as is. You still have your option period and whatnot, just in case, but go ahead and put buyer accepts property as is, all right? Do not click this. You don't have to put subject to inspection. That's already implied. So just go ahead and click buyer accepts property as is. And make sure you have an option period when you do this, so that if you do have any other things that you want to address, it's done there. I've seen a lot of people check this and they go, I want it professionally cleaned. Please remember that some things are subjective. And if you can, instead of you asking for things to be done, ask for the money, okay? So I would click buyer accepts property as is, okay? And go through your inspection period and then give them a whole list of everything you want. You don't want to be nitpicky. Oh, do this. Then I want 5 days inspection. Next day, day 2, do this, do that. Just don't do that. Put buyer accepts property as is. Make sure you have an inspection when you do that, inspection period when you do that, and the money's turned in time. And then once you've had your inspections, get a list of everything that your client wants, and then you present that in an amendment, okay? Get your offer accepted. All right, so when it comes to lender required repairs, I think I've made it very clear. If I have not, you be careful when it comes to doing amendments, sending lender repairs. Repair list, because you guys may have you might do an inspection and you find out that, well, let's read this real quick. It says, otherwise agreed in writing, neither party is obligated to pay for lender required repairs, which include treatment for wood destroying insects. If the parties do not agree to pay for the lender required repairs or treatments, the contract will terminate and the earnest money will be refunded to the buyer. If the cost of lender required repairs and treatment exceeds 5% of the sales price, listen, the buyer can just terminate the contract and get their earnest money back, and they will be fully refunded. So you want to be careful, because most of the time your buyer wants to buy the home, your seller wants to sell it. And there may be a situation where your seller is selling and they don't have the funds to make these quote unquote lender required repairs. And let's say, for example, you did an inspection and you found out that the roof was bad. Well, the seller's like, well, I don't have the money to fix the roof, but I'll let it come out of the proceeds. And you guys agree to that. But what if you accidentally sent that repair to the lender and the lender's like, yo, I'm not at all going to loan on this property until after the roof is fixed? Well, who's going to pay for the roof when you guys have already agreed to, take care of it at closing, less money you bring. So just be careful sending your lenders a copy of the inspection reports and things like such, okay? Because they can put a halt on your deal. If you have any more questions about that, let me know. Now it's talking, this right here just letting you know completion of repairs. Even if you do, in the contract it's saying that all the Repairs, unless otherwise agreed in writing, the seller shall complete all repairs and treatments prior to the day of closing and obtain any permits. They need to be sending up if it is a treatment that requires somebody that's licensed to perform it, they have to be licensed. A long time ago, we said they're licensed plumber. You don't have to do that. This is implied right here. The repairs and treatment must be performed by some person who is licensed to provide such repair or treatment. If no license is required by law or commercially engaged in a trade of providing such repair, then seller shall either provide buyer a copy of the documentation. They usually show, scope of work, proof of payment, photos, receipts, and stuff and such. If you do utilize someone that is a tradesman, you might want to have a receipt of their stuff. Make sure there's a transferable warranty and information as to how your new buyer can access that stuff. All right. This is just kind of letting you know this stuff. Environmental matters. So if your buyer is concerned with any of the presence of waste, wetlands, toxic substance, if your buyer is concerned with that, then there's a form that needs to be filled out. Okay. Only if they're concerned. And then H is residential service contract. That is a home warranty, not home insurance, home warranty. This, you're going to put an amount in here, maybe I would say about $500. Let's say $500, depending on your pool or whatever. But this is the amount that the seller will give to the buyer to go towards the home warranty. Okay. There's several home warranty companies out there. We do have a general email in your KV core that you can utilize to send out so your client can choose who they would like. Again, your client chooses who they want, but the seller will give them X amount of money, which you put here, to go towards a home warranty. If they don't use that money, they lose it. Okay. So you can get something a little bit more expensive. Like say they get a home warranty and it may be $600. They just pay the $500 difference at the closing table. But if your clients are like, well, I only want to pay just that, and maybe they get a home warranty that's $300, they've lost the $200, okay? That goes back to the seller. They don't use, they lose it. But purchase of a home residential service contract is optional. And pretty much if there's nothing in here, like say the seller doesn't, the seller is going to give the buyer some money. But if you're not asking the seller to give you any money, you're just going to put NA, okay? To go towards a home warranty, all right? All right, that's it for paragraph 7. Let me know if you have any questions.